Everyone has that one game they can never get to the table. Well, we have 5. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Tabletop Shop. I am one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and seated across the world from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
What's up?
That's
all I got.
Cody?
That's all I got for you today.
That's all you got?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Hey.
You know what? Sometimes I just can't ask any more of you, so that's all right.
Thank you. I'm glad to set such low expectations. It's a lot less work for me in the long run.
Well, to just dive right into things here, I gotta say, it's been interesting. So I've been in Germany for a little while now, and I was kind of thinking like every time we record an episode, it'd just be like kind of the same games, you know? Like, oh, I played Seven Wonders Duel again. Oh, I played Lost Cities again, you know? I gotta tell you, I got some new games to talk about, man.
Really? I do too, actually, but I'm curious, where are you playing all these new and interesting games?
I have, the local library here actually has quite a few decent ones available, so I've kind of picked up a couple there, and then found a couple other smaller games online, like used copies, you know, things I wouldn't get too attached to that I could leave behind when I leave, but things that are cheap to pick up, you know, $10 or less, games I wanted to play, so yeah. Quite a few
Is that
games.
normal for a library to just have board games?
Yeah, actually it is. I think some of the ones in our area do as like back in the Oregon do as well. But I never really checked it out, you know? But I think they do. I think most libraries do a pretty good job of making sure all the components, you know, come back. And yeah, I mean, it's a good way to try out a game that you don't want to just like outright buy, you know?
Yeah. That's
so
genius.
Are board game cafes for any of those of you who have board game cafes nearby. You know, a few bucks, you can go try out a game. You don't have to buy it full price right away. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And there's food, which is nice.
Well, why don't you go ahead and go first, Cody? I am intrigued to hear about some of your new games.
Sure. Yeah, okay. The first one I have on my list is a game that was about as, I guess, mediocre as I expected it to be.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it before until the day that I played it. I was at like a little Christmas party. World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. Have you heard of this?
I've heard the Wrath of the Lich King thing sounds really familiar, but I don't know anything about it.
So it's Pandemic rethemed in World of Warcraft. And the front of the box actually says, like, uses the Pandemic engine. So it's like certified Pandemic.
Yeah.
I will say, so I'm not a big fan of Pandemic. I mean, I want to try the legacy games since they're so popular. I'm sure they're pretty interesting. Yeah, it's just one of those cooperative games that never really gripped me.
Me as well.
I will say I'd probably rather play Wrath of the Lich King over normal Pandemic because it's a little bit more interesting.
I'm assuming it has a little bit more of a theme, at least.
Yeah, so there's this Lich King dude that is like summoning weird goblins or undead creatures. I don't really know the lore behind it, but yeah, instead of disease cubes, the different like towns on the map are slowly getting filled up with these little goblin guys. And so you play as a different hero with a few different unique abilities. I want to say it was a little bit more advanced than standard Pandemic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just going around fighting the dudes. But then instead of trying to find a cure for each of the diseases, there's just these little like quest areas that you just have to roll dice and move along a track to complete the quests. And then once you complete all the quests, then you just fight
move along a track.
Well, it's like the track requires symbols to get. So you roll some dice to get successes and you move along. But then you have these cards played out in front of you that if you have like matching symbols, you can advance a couple extra spaces. So there is some strategy to it.
Hmm. Well, I guess if I was ever in a room with nothing except that game, I might try it. But that, yeah,
Uh,
okay.
it has, I will say, it has some pretty cool miniatures. Like there's a fair amount of production
That's what I
that
was
goes into
expecting.
this.
That's kind of what I
Yeah.
meant as far as theme. Like, Pandemic is just cubes and houses, So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad it had a better production, maybe. So,
Yeah. So I got that. Played Splendor Duel. Thank you, by the way. It was a good Christmas present.
yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. It was pretty fun. So I'm also not the biggest fan of Splendor. I
Yeah,
don't know why. Just the that particular form of engine building, um, I find can be more frustrating than enjoyable for me. But Splendor Duel makes it better. There's uh, I guess like a couple different mechanisms they throw in there to make it a little more spicy. Different ways that you can win, which is cool. Instead of just getting victory points, you can get enough crowns because there's points on some cards, but then some cards may
yeah.
have little crown tokens on them. Then there's a third way, and I don't remember what it was. I've only played it once so far.
But kind of Seven Wonders duel style, where there's three different kind of paths to victory that you can
Yeah, yeah.
pursue.
You can see the Bruno Catala influence
Yeah,
that
that's right. It
modified
is
that.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Is
that was
it
pretty good. Hmm?
is it a Splendor killer for you? Like,
Oh yeah, I'd rather play this than Splendor
okay, okay.
because
Would
it
you get
it
rid of
it
Splendor, or would you still keep it like to play with more than two people?
um I so rarely break out Splendor that I probably wouldn't really mind parting with it, but Kirsten
Yeah,
does like it. And it is a good entry level game, like if we have a group of 4 people to play
for
with.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
So yeah. It also does fit, I think kind of like I told you, that niche of easy to break out games that are both easy to set up, easy to take down, but still have a fair amount of strategy packed in to a small little
yeah,
box. It,
yeah.
it, it kind of starts.
It's a nice thing to not have to dedicate an entire, afternoon or entire evening to get that same experience. But sometimes
Yeah.
that is nice too. So,
Sure, depends on the mood, but it adds
yeah,
it adds to those options. Played Anachrony twice now.
nice.
Yeah, obviously you and I have been chatting about this over text for my progression of how I enjoy the game. The
Yeah,
first game, it was not as mind bending as I was hoping it would be, or earth shattering, and I guess I was a little bit disappointed because of that. But the second game was better. I will say I enjoyed it a bit more. There's a few things we didn't play with the first game, such as some more interesting player powers. You have these like asymmetric boards you can play with, but the first game you just like play side A. That's all
yeah. Just so you can
easier.
understand it.
Sure. So that made it a little bit more interesting. And I guess I just enjoyed the overall engine and mechanisms of the game better the second time through. I'm leaning towards probably getting the exosuit
Really?
upgrade. Yeah.
Wow.
Even though it's
Wow.
like $40, maybe I can find it discounted somewhere.
Well, that does speak kind of like for itself, like for how you feel about the game. If you're willing to
Hmm.
kind of double the price just to make the experience, you know,
Yeah.
more
I
satisfying.
Before I do that, I'll probably still play it a couple times just to see
Sure.
how it lasts, but
Just to make
I'm
sure
leaning
it's,
towards
yeah.
that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good to hear, man. I mean, that's one we've both hyped up in our minds a lot. So it's cool you got your
Yeah.
hands on a copy, and it's good that it did not necessarily disappoint. Maybe it wasn't that white knight on a stallion, but it was still a solid game. That's good to hear.
Sure. I will say I somewhat despise the little workers. There's different workers. There's like the mech hexagons. Those are pretty cool. But then there's these little worker dudes that are these little like USCCA target shaped guys. But it's just these little workers that the art reminds me so much of Otis. I know you never played that, but I played it
Yeah, I know
once
it.
and it
I
was
know it
boring and
is though.
uninteresting. Yeah, so I think that just gave me a bad impression upon that little worker art style. And so
Huh.
seeing it in Anachrony is like, no, I don't want that. Take it away.
That sucks.
So maybe I'll upgrade those. Then played Heaven and Ale, which is
Nice.
just a good game. That was one of those other games where I was super excited for it, and it was a bit of a letdown the first time I played it because it's really not thematic at all. Like the game engine has really nothing to do with making beer by
No.
monks.
No. It's
But the
just a
more I
tile
play
laying
it,
game.
yeah, it really is. The more I play it, I really like it though.
Cool. How many times have you
Uh,
played it?
well, recently just once, but since I've gotten it, probably 3 or 4 times,
Okay, okay. So it
something
won't be
like
on the
that.
list today.
No, yeah,
All
I
right,
played
all
it enough. Man, I need to get through these games. All right, played Spirit Island a
right.
couple times.
Okay,
Kirsten doesn't
well,
really like it that much because it's very brain burning. Feels like you're
yeah.
just kind of dying as you're trying to fight the system the whole time. But I do like having the options of the different play styles of the different spirits you can
Yeah,
do.
there's so many options. The game is stressful for sure, though, and
Yeah,
because it just gets worse and worse and worse. Like it gets
yeah, man,
you feel like you're losing more and more control as the game goes on.
and hard to win. We lost terribly our first game, so then we restarted a game like twice and kept having a bad start, and finally we just barely eked out a win, like on the last
Nice.
possible
Okay.
turn. So we
Oh,
did
that's
that.
good.
Yeah, got some Nidavellir action up in there. Still one of my favorite games. I'm
Man,
sad that you don't really like it and that
it's
Kirsten doesn't
weird,
really
isn't
like
it? It's
it.
weird that like you and I differ so much on that.
Yeah, but it's a classic for me and it'll always stay a classic. And then speaking of classics, I got the Dominion app on my phone. I've been
Oh,
cranking out a couple games of that.
nice, nice.
So that's my spread.
Space.
What you got?
Well, it's still Seven Wonders Duel. I feel like I've talked about that game a lot, so I won't talk about it much more. But another
All right.
Bruna Catala rendition of a very popular game.
Mm-hmm.
Quicks again. It's a dice game I talked about last episode. Also, just a simple dice game. Then I had a chance to play Machi Koro.
Hmm.
I might have mentioned that last time also, but it's kind of the spiritual predecessor to. Well, okay, I guess it's more. Space Base is the spiritual successor to Machi Koro. It's the same system, basically. Rolling dice, you have cards with numbers. They produce things depending on what's rolled. Other people rolling things gets you stuff also. You're buying new cards, making your tableau better until you complete a goal to win. So it's fun. Um, Base Machikoro is very simple, but I also got an expansion. Actually, technically two expansions with it, and with those thrown in, it's yeah, it's something I've played like 3 or 4 times now. It's pretty fun.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, I also had a chance to play Broom Service a couple times. Um,
Yeah.
I could. It's a hard game to explain quickly, so I probably won't give a very good explanation of it. But it's essentially a pick up and deliver game. Um, but the core of the game is based around these 10 action cards, and every round you pick 4 of them, and you don't get to use the other 6. And then you can play these cards either as strong or as brave. I'm sorry, either as like strong or as weak. If you play it
Hmm.
as weak, you get the guaranteed weak action, but it's not very good. If you play it as strong, you might get the strong action, but only if nobody else picked that card for that round. So it's kind
Ah,
of a mind game.
I like
Um,
that.
yeah, it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun. I was pleasantly surprised. I just kind of picked it up because it was cheap and available. It's
Are you going to
it's
keep that or leave it behind when you move?
I don't know. It's a big box. It's way way overboxed. It's a Castles of Burgundy sized box because it's part of the same series.
Oh.
Those like Aaliyah games or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm sure I could find another copy pretty cheap in the U.S. too. So, no, it was a surprisingly fun game for sure. Um, Tiny Towns. I also had a chance to play. That's one that I've had my eye on
Hmm.
for a while. Uh, and honestly, it was more fun than I thought it was going to be. It's just like a city building game basically, but there's these resources, and every turn somebody names one of the 5 resources, and everybody has to take that resource and put it on their map, whether they want it or not. You
Ah.
have like a little 4x4 grid, and so you're trying to build patterns for the buildings. And when you build a pattern, you can take all of them off and replace one of them with the building. So you have to build out maybe 2, 3, 4, or even 5 different resources in a specific pattern. But once you do that, you get to take the building that you built, take all the cubes off, and just pick one of those spots, put the building on it. So your board
Hmm.
gets more and more constricted. And so it's really kind of a puzzly thing. But then other people name resources that you have to take. Sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. So it's a fun puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I added that to my games to get list somewhere.
I would definitely say at least like if you ever stop by the cafe again, I would be surprised if they have a copy.
Hmm.
It's easy to learn. You can learn it in 5 minutes, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Is it related in any way to Dice Town?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, cool story.
There's so many city games out there. My goodness, that's a
I
huge
know.
yeah. And then my last one is Cartographers. Just had a chance to play that yesterday.
Yeah.
It's all again more fun than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting a mediocre delivery from the game, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's a flip and write where there's like four different colors, basically, technically like land types, whatever. When it gets flipped, you might have one or two color options, and you might have one or two shape options. You put them into your board. You flip a few, like X amount of cards every round. But then the cool thing is that there's four different ways you score your mat, and there's four different rounds. In the first round, you score the first two, and in the second round, you score the second and the third one. In the third round, you score the third and the fourth one, and in the fourth round, you score the first and the last one. Um,
Hmm.
so it's pretty cool. And there's also these kind of attack cards that might get flipped up, where you basically like rotate mats with somebody else temporarily, and you like get to draw in an attack, kind of, to make their mat worse. So that's kind of fun too, to have a little bit of a wrench thrown into your plans sometimes. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like it became a modern classic pretty quickly. I feel like it was really popular. It's not that old actually. It's only a couple years old. Um, but I was pleasantly surprised. And so if anybody's into flip and writes at all and you haven't tried this, then yeah, you could probably find a copy pretty cheaply. And I've been happy with it. I'm excited to play it again. So
Hmm. This is one of those games that I keep hearing about, and I keep thinking is going to be a pretty cool game, especially when you look at the cover of it. It's like a little elf and gnome fella doing some cartographering, whatever that is. But then I always
cartography.
just look, yeah, cartography. Then I look at the pictures of the game, and I just see these really ugly sketched out maps, and I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the game comes with like just four pencils, and you have to like draw the colors are cool in the game, but then they each have a symbol too, and you just draw the symbol in. We're using colored like markers, so there's actually
hmm,
colors on the mat, So it kind
okay,
of just looks like a Tetris game basically, but the strategy's there. It's fun. I really enjoy it. I guess it's
okay,
kind of a polyomino game in a way, or more of a city building game, I guess, but
hmm.
yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I like it quite a bit. If it ends up back in the U.S. with me, we'll definitely play it because it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
I suspect, despite my reservations, I'd probably actually enjoy it quite a bit.
The thing is, it's so tiny and easy to pull out and quick to play that
Hmm.
even if it's not like the best experience ever, it's easy to come back to, and it's 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 not a miserable experience by any stretch of the imagination. Like it's fun, even if it's not super complicated. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's all I got. But I'm pretty happy with that since I didn't think I'd be playing any of those kinds of games ever.
Yeah, man,
So,
that's a pretty good list.
yeah,
Between the two of us, actually, we've got a lot of new plays in
a
there.
lot of new ones. Yeah, for sure.
Go us.
Go
Pat on the
us,
back.
man.
Good job, Tabletop Shop. Anyway, enough of this
Ba-da-bum.
garbage. Are you saying it's time for the game of the week, Nate?
It's time for the game of the week, man.
Nate, what is our game of the week?
Our game of the week is kind of one of the first hobby board games either of us really ever played. Like, I grew up playing Catan and Dominion and Carcassonne, so I
Sure,
guess
same.
those count. But it was definitely one of the first newer ones either of us ever played,
Yeah.
right?
I guess it was, wasn't it?
And you just kind of got it for me on a whim, but Akrotiri
Yeah,
has kind of
Akrotiri.
always been kind of a little gem in our hearts. It's always had a soft spot because it was one of the first games we played, I feel like.
Yeah. But not just that, it remains as a quality game. It's not ranked very high. I'm going to pull it up here, but I want to say it's like 800 something on the Geek.
I wonder why that
Eight,
is.
848.
That
I don't
feels
know.
low.
I'm going to call this the curse of J. Cormier.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
Because good old J. Cormier, he makes good games. Made this Akrotiri, co-designed it with Sen-Fung Lim, and then made In the Hall of the Mountain King with Graham Johns. Both excellent games. Both are very underrated.
Yeah, and in the Hall of the Mountain King is even more. it's so strange to me, even more so. Akrotiri is kind of an older game at this point, so it's like, okay, it's dropped, sure.
Hmm.
Still probably
Sure.
lower than it should be, but I get it. In the Hall of the Mountain King is just a few years old, and that one's really weird that it just, yeah, it didn't get
Yeah.
the traction. But we're not talking about that. So
Or are we?
Akrotiri, well,
All
we
right.
are.
Okay.
Akrotiri is a pretty standard pick up and deliver game, but it's also a tile laying game. And all the tiles have colors associated with them that do a couple of things, one of which they determine one of the resources that's put on them, but they also create kind of this color schematic. As the board gets bigger and bigger, there's more and more colors all over the board. And you, as the player, have basically contracts you're trying to complete. Well, temples. You're trying to build temples. And
Yeah.
those temples have to fall within the color coordinates, basically, on the map. And so you might have to make sure that your temple has 2 red symbols above it and 1 green symbol to the right of it and 3 black symbols below it. And
Hmm.
anywhere on the map where you can meet those requirements, you can build your temple as long as nobody else has built on that island yet. Um, and that's pretty much it. You have a few actions on your turn. You go around, you pick up resources, you sell them to make money, and then you have to pay money to build the temples. And it's a delightful little puzzle.
Yeah. From the description itself, it almost seems kind of random for how you can place these temples down, but really it's not because you and the other player are always putting down a new colored tile on your turn. And so you're looking at your contracts and you're trying to help build out the map in a way that it allows you to build one of your temples. But not
Yeah,
only
I mean,
that, there's a variety of islands that get produced over the course of the whole map, but you're only allowed to have one temple, like not per person, like between both players, only one temple on each island. So maybe you can finally place one of your smaller contracts on this island, be like, oh, I'm really trying to fill one of my bigger ones though. So I'm going to try to wait and then put this temple down.
yeah,
It bends
or
the mind.
and there's I think that I love games like this with the player interaction that is indirect. Again, you're not attacking the other person in this game, but you're both building temples. And they might build a temple on an island that you were going to build. They might not build anywhere. Like you might need to build up in this corner of the island and they build way down in that corner. But either way, they've now taken up the whole island. You can't build on it. Or even worse, they might have built on a different island and you were going to build on this one over here, but they play a piece that connects them and it becomes the same island and now you can't even
Yeah,
play on the other spot, And so
exactly.
I like player interaction like that where I don't know. This it's almost a little too indirect because you don't know the other person's goals, so you don't even know what they're trying to do. So if you thwart them, it's on accident.
Hmm.
Um, but I kind of like that there's no attacking or anything in this game. It's all just kind of play your own game, but we're both doing it in the same map. And the things you do might help the other person. You might place a green tile down that helps me with one of my goals, which is cool. It's always kind of exciting when that happens. You're like, hey, cool, that's gets me one step closer. I don't have to do that. And so
Yeah,
half the tiles that get placed out you have control over, and the other half might actually help you. They're probably not going to hurt you. So that's pretty cool too.
yeah. There's also a competitive resource market where there's 4 different resource cubes, and every time you put down a tile, you place whatever corresponding color of cube goes to that tile, and then you place a second one of your choice off of the resource mat where all these cubes come from. But the more cubes get removed from the mat, the higher the sale price is for when you sell those cubes back to the mat. So let's say green is getting pretty close to a sale. You might try to sell your green cubes before the other person can and get some nice monies off of those. So I enjoy how it's not just indirect player interaction in some ways, but there is competition for who can
True,
work the
yeah.
market the best.
That definitely is the most direct kind of player interaction, I guess. I've
Hmm.
never been a huge fan of, I don't know, that kind of economy system in games. I don't like, I don't know, like games like Raccoon Tycoon.
I was going to
And
say that. Yeah.
I hate Raccoon Tycoon.
Oh, really?
I hate it, dude. It's not even in my top 100.
Wow, that's kind of sad.
I don't like games that are centered around that idea, but I like it when there's a simplified little economy thing going on inside of a game. Same with Brass Birmingham. It's not a core of the game, but it does affect the game and it is there and you can utilize it and manipulate it a little bit. Uh,
Hmm.
and so it's the same in this game and it works really well. Yeah.
Is it safe to assume you're never going to try Lizard Wizard?
I think Lizard Wizard is a totally different game. If you owned a copy, I would definitely try it, but I would
Okay.
certainly never just buy it. I don't think.
Maybe I'll try to rent it or something or play it at the cafe.
Yeah, I don't know if they have it either. But
Yeah.
um, another thing about this game is the components. This is something you were specifically like from the first time we played it. You were very gung ho about this, and it's pretty cool. I have no idea what they're made out of. It's some sort of composite material, but it has a lot of like weight to it, kind of, and it almost doesn't, but it does. You know what I mean? Like when you're holding them and you
I
kind of shake
do.
them,
Yeah.
you're like, well, it's not Catan pieces. It's not just wood. You can feel that there's more weight to it, but it's almost like it's almost imperceptible, but it's there, you know? It's so
Yeah.
strange.
Well, the boats and the cubes are pretty standard wood. It's the
Yes.
temples that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying though. They look like they should be wood, but they feel heavier than you'd think they are. So I don't know if it's some sort of, I guess, like dense plastic that is then just painted over, so it can be maybe possibly easy to mistake it as wood. I don't know,
Yeah. I don't know. But
but it's
it's
cool.
nice. It feels good. For such a tiny little game, it's nice to have that kind of high quality little. It feels high quality. Maybe it's not, but it feels high quality. And that's really all that matters, anyways, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and
the-
it's an affordable. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say the rest of the game is nothing special as far as components go. They're good. The tiles are good. The money's good. Everything else is just normal, but the temples are above average, I would
Sure.
say.
Well, none of the components are bad in any way.
Nope.
Like the
No.
the worst of the components is just standard, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Just average.
But all that to say, I mean, the box is the same size as Seven Wonders Duel or Cave versus Cave or any of those little small square boxes.
Yeah.
And the game, I want to say the game's like about $20 if you can find it. And it's pretty good. Like that's a good price for a little game like that with a lot of
Yeah.
play you can get out of it.
For sure. I think I've probably played this game definitely, I would say probably close to 15 times, honestly.
Okay. I don't think I played it quite that much, but I still have gotten a fair amount of plays out of it. And I'll continue to play it. Like I'm not going to get rid of this game.
The weird thing is that I feel like I'm never excited to play it. I'm never like, oh yeah, Akrotiri, yeah, let's get that out. I want to play that again. I'm never excited to, but I'm always very satisfied after I play it.
Yeah.
I've taught it to a lot of people. People always like it. And I'm always like, after I finish a game, I'm like, yeah, that was fun. I like this game, you know? Because it doesn't, it's not an exciting game necessarily, you know? Like it doesn't look exciting necessarily. It doesn't, there's no like tense moments of thrill in the game or anything.
Hmm.
There's no push your luck aspect that kind of gets you on the edge of your seat, but it's a very solid design. And yeah, it's hard to walk. You can't walk away and say it's a bad game. I feel like you just can't.
Nah, not at all. Is there anything you don't like about it though?
Like I said, it doesn't elicit any kind of excitement, which is a little disappointing. And for that reason, honestly, I
Hmm.
probably haven't played it as much as I would have. Um, and so it delivers a satisfying gameplay experience, but I feel like it's not very unique necessarily.
Hmm.
I feel like the concepts in it are kind of, and I actually don't know exactly how old the game is, so I don't know if maybe anything it did was new. Um, but in general, it's kind of it's a standard pick up and deliver. It's kind of a standard contract fulfillment. Um, I like that how the board is placed affects your contracts, your temples that you're trying to build. That's kind of cool. Um, it just has a kind of the standard economy thing going on the side. So I feel like there's nothing revolutionary, which is a little disappointing.
Hmm.
But also, I think it's delivered very well.
Yeah.
What about you? Anything that I don't know? I mean, you own the game also, but probably don't come back to it too often.
Yeah, it has been a while since I pulled it out last. So I don't think that says anything about the game necessarily. I do agree that it doesn't necessarily elicit a large measure of excitement until you start playing it, and then it is just, in fact, a satisfying experience. One complaint I have, which isn't really a complaint, it's more just an observation. Sometimes the game can feel a little bit too long, I think, for the content that the game brings. there is still a rising action to the course of the game, because the more temples you get placed out, you're unlocking more actions you can do. You can do more cool things. Eventually, you'll be able to fulfill larger contracts. So there is a good arc to the game. I feel like maybe it could be a little bit shorter, and I'd probably get out the game more frequently if it was
Hmm.
a little bit less long.
You know, it's weird. Um,
I don't know. What do you think?
the game, I agree, the game does kind of start to drag on, like maybe about halfway through. But actually, once you get towards the end, then you're like, I have so much I need to
Yeah.
do. Like when the other person's closer to ending the game than you are, you're
Uh-huh.
like, oh no, I need to get this temple built. I don't have enough time to do what I need to
Yeah.
do, you know? So that's kind of cool
There's
too.
some good stress up in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, beyond that, I don't really have much other critiques for the game, other than I would recommend viewers, if you can find it. I
Definitely.
spent a long time trying to find this, because I got it for Nate some years ago, and then shortly after there, it just went out of print for like close to 2 years. I think I kept looking for it for a long time, and finally found it out in print again on Amazon, and I snapped it,
Yeah, I
just
would
stole it.
say, I feel like I don't say this very often for games. This is one I would say just buy. If you find it at a good price that you're willing to spend, just buy it. You know,
Hmm.
like I didn't say that with Brass. I didn't say that with Stronghold. Most games I wouldn't say just buy it. This one I would. There's not much risk. You know, it's a game that I think a lot of different types of people will like, and it's not too long necessarily. It's still a short experience. It might feel longer than it should, but it's still not a long game. Um, and I think it delivers in enough areas that most people would be happy with this game for sure.
Yeah, it picks up and it delivers, Nate.
Okay, well that seems like a good thing to end
All right,
on.
it's cool beans.
That's
Well,
a
Nate, do you want to?
great one line review for that game. It picks up and it delivers.
I just went through, like, I made my own separate Board Game Geek profile, because we had a Way Brothers one for a long time. Well, we still have that, but I wanted to make my own so I could actually start putting ratings on games. I
Yeah.
should have written that for Akrotiri. That would have been great.
Well, you know, you still can.
That's true. I'll go back right after this episode and change it.
No, you won't. All
I
right.
will. Actually, I will. I'll prove it to
Okay.
you
All right. All
later.
right. All right. Yeah. So our board banter this week is another list. Today we are talking, as very directly alluded to in the intro of this episode, our top 5 games that we like, but we rarely play
For whatever reason.
for whatever reason, probably
Yeah.
different reasons
I'd
depending on the
say
game.
I think my games have perhaps a variety of reasons.
So I'm sure that I will have made my list in an acceptable manner by your standards. However, I'm not 100% sure. Um, I mean, I took multiple games that met the criteria, games that I
Okay.
like, and games that I felt like I didn't play very much, and then I took my top 5 from that, the 5 I liked the most. But then I sorted them kind of by how much I've actually played them. So kind of
Okay.
my least played is at the top, and my most played is at the bottom, out
Are
of
we going
my
to have
5 favorites.
we're going to have another Christmas episode debacle where you have this really complicated algorithm for how your game
No,
fits and how satisfied you were
no.
versus how
It's
much it
very
met your
simple.
expectations? Okay.
It's very
All right.
simple. It's my top 5 favorite games that I feel like I haven't played enough. You know, just like the name of our list is, but they're
Okay.
just
All right.
sorted by how much I've played them. So the one I've played the most is my number 5.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty
Mine
simple.
is I took games that I felt qualified for, that I like but just don't play very often, and then I sorted them basically by how much I like them.
No
It's
comment,
like
Cody. No
like the,
comment.
the number 3 game I like more than 4, 4 I like more than 5. What? What?
Uh,
What's
all
this?
right.
Well, we need to start burning
Yeah,
through
yeah,
these
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fast, I think, because we have 5 to go through. Who wants to start?
I will start, Cody,
All right, what you got?
because my number 5 is a game that actually hasn't been mentioned too much on the podcast, but it's actually one of the games I've owned the longest.
Really?
Yes. And I do not own it anymore, and that is Root.
Aha. You
Root,
don't own it anymore because I own it.
yes. Yeah, actually, Root was one of the ones I kind of bought very early into the hobby. It was like one of my first purchases, honestly. And I loved it, but I had such a hard time playing this game.
Hmm.
Like, it's just so it's not just asymmetrical. Like we mentioned Pandemic earlier, where everybody has a special power, basically. It's not asymmetrical like that. It's asymmetrical like 95% of what I do in the game is different than what everybody else in the game does.
Hmm.
Everybody is doing like almost entirely different stuff, and there's some stuff on the board that's the same for everybody. But other than that, everyone's kind of doing their own thing the whole time. And so it's such a hard game to get people to play because you have to have a good grip on it and you have to be able to explain what they need to do. And if they want to do well, they need to understand what you're doing. And so it's just the learning curve is so steep on this game. Um,
Hmm.
and so I actually have played it a fair amount of times though, because like physically maybe only 3 times, honestly, which is so sad because it's a very good looking production too. But of course, I downloaded the app and I've played that a handful of times. But it's really not the same experience. So I still felt like this game deserved to be on the list.
Yeah. I didn't think of that one. That probably could have made my list. The problem is I've only played it once and I honestly don't remember it super well. So I wouldn't have
Yeah.
been able to speak very much to it. But that's a good choice. It's rough that you can't really pull it out with 2 players unless you get the was it the Clockwork expansion, I think.
Well, you still can. It's just not. It's definitely a
Oh.
better experience with 3. Um, but you can definitely still do it with 2. I think.
Oh, okay. I need to start pulling this out then.
Yeah, give it a whirl.
Get it played. All right. Well, my number 5, I'm guessing this is going to be on your list.
Okay.
I think I anticipated 2 crossovers, but we'll just see what happens. Beyond the Sun.
Okay.
Beyond the Sun is a large spacefaring game, almost blandly themed because the game basically looks like you're in space. It's a lot of black and kind of
Black and
dulled
white.
colors.
It's
Yeah, black
very
and white.
yeah.
Even like the purple pieces and dice is kind of like a muted color.
Yeah, they're kind of washed out.
Yeah, but that's fine. It fits the theme. To my knowledge, you and I both have only played this once.
Just
Uh,
once.
and I actually literally just sold it yesterday, unfortunately. I liked the game. I just don't think I'm ever going to really have good opportunity to pull it out. And it is a big,
Yeah.
awkward box. I just needed to make some room in the
Yeah,
library.
that's really
Yeah.
disappointing. One play and then sold. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it took me a long time before I sold it. It's just I think I realized I was never really going to be able to
It's
get it out.
it's an annoying situation. I pretty much anybody who collects board games can kind of resonate with this. When you own a game that you're like, I love this game, and I mean, basically what this list is, I love this game, but I just don't know how much I can realistically play it. And eventually, you've got to make cuts,
Yeah.
and you've got to get rid of games that you maybe only played once or twice and you really like, but they're for whatever reason they're just so inconvenient to get back to the table, and you got to cut ties at some point. It's a hard thing to do.
Sacrifices have to be made.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a little bit more about the game. It's like I said, it's a spacefaring game, but it's also very tech tree oriented. Each player
Yeah.
has their own. Well, no, there's one large board that both
Yep.
players are moving along, and eventually you have all the level 1 cards available, and then once you progress enough, you can pull out and choose a new level 2 tech card to put into play that both players can access and activate. But then you also have your own personal boards that function sort of kind of like a scythe-esque engine building where you're moving these pieces off. When you move the pieces off, they make it more powerful. And the reason I really just don't really play it is Kirsten's not a big fan of space games. And this is a pretty heavy, as we established, kind of dry space game.
Yeah, it's a big investment and it's really abstract. Like there's almost no theme. Even the part where you're actually flying your ships around in space, like your ships are dice with numbers and a picture of a ship,
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's so abstracted and it's basically just one big tech tree anyways, which is
sure.
cool, but yeah, hard to get into thematically.
It's not a bad game at all. It's an excellent game, in
No,
fact. But
no,
there are
it's on your
probably
list.
some better themed games aesthetically, maybe. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's my number 5.
good choice. Good choice. My number 4 is definitely the oldest game on my list.
Oh,
Uh, and I've probably also only played it maybe 3 times. And this is my favorite of the different types of Risk I've played, this is my favorite. This is Risk 2210 AD.
Hmm.
You've
Okay.
maybe played this game once a long time ago. I'm not
I think
sure.
just once with you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it has a lot of similarities to the original Risk, but I find it far superior in that, well, the theme is just cooler. So it's futuristic. You have mechs, and you have 5 different commanders, which are really cool, and they have cool figurines also. Um, and you have all these water territories too, and you have the moon that you can go to. The moon
Yeah.
is like a separate board that you can go to. Um, but really, the meat of like how the game is different is you have these 5 commanders that you can buy. Basically, there's currency in the game too. You can buy these different commanders, and they roll extra. They roll like 8-sided dice, more powerful dice. But then they also, whenever you get a certain commander, it unlocks a deck of cards that you can also purchase cards from, and the cards are really powerful, like really really powerful. And
Hmm.
so getting these commanders is super cool, and then getting their cards is super cool. You've got like a nuclear commander with all these nuclear war cards, and your moon commander, and you've got moon bases and all this stuff. The game just looks great, and there's so much more strategy in it. It's not just pure tactics like Risk is, but there's more. I mean, it's still very tactical, I guess, but just the new kind of addition of all these cards and commanders is really really cool, and the game looks amazing too. So yeah, phenomenal game, a very good experience. It's so long though, and it doesn't work with 2 players. It's Risk, so you need kind of at least 3, more like 4 people to play it with, and that's just hard to do.
Hmm.
So
If I get another chance to give this a play, I will. I just really don't see that happening anytime soon.
and I mean, I don't know. It's kind of not really your type of game necessarily either, right?
Risk isn't my favorite, but I do remember enjoying Risk 2210, just having the different aspects of how you can advance your military is a little bit more intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a great design, and I would definitely, if people are interested in getting this game, definitely find the older Avalon Hill production. Don't get the newer Wizards of the Coast reprint because they really cut corners on the production. Like,
Mm,
yeah, it's
dang it, Wizards of the
embarrassing
Coast.
how low quality that version is. So find the old big box version for sure.
All right. Well, my number 4 is a game that has been featured on the show, sort of. Not really featured, but I previously described it as a game that we were disappointed that we did not both get to play it, and only I have played it. It is Outlive.
Outlive,
Um,
yeah.
I've only played it once. I just played it at the Board Game Cafe, and that's why it's a game I rarely play because I don't own it. If I bought it, I would want to get the cool deluxe Kickstarter edition,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's mega expensive. So
Well,
that's part of my
because
deterrent.
you would also be buying it secondhand, probably. So
Probably, yeah. Maybe I can go to the cafe and convince them to just sell it to me.
good luck.
Probably not. But Outlive is a worker placement game set in the post-apocalypse, not zombie themed. You're just kind of surviving it out, and you're playing as a sort of a tribe or group of people that's trying to get, I guess, elected to be selected to go live underwater with a more prevalent surviving community. I don't know. It's kind of
Bioshock,
a weird
basically.
concept there. Yeah. But how you function in the game is you have a group of 4 workers that have different values to them. You have a 2, 3 workers, a 4, and then a 5, I think is what it is. And the worker you put down, it activates its action according to its strength. So if you put down a number 4 worker on, let's say like a wood chopping spot, I think there's a wood chopping spot. I don't remember. You would get 4 pieces of wood, and there's a variety of resources and all that. I'm trying to make this quick because we're getting a little bit short on time, but good game. I don't know if I'll buy it anytime soon.
But it is across the street from you, like literally. So,
That's true.
whenever
I
you
haven't been to
want,
the
you can.
cafe in a long time though.
Yeah, yeah. But I would love to get my hands on it. Again, I love any variation on worker placement. I'm always like excited
Yeah,
to try that out. So, yeah,
especially when it's a new cool way like that.
yeah. My number 3 is a game I've only played a couple times. I would have played it more, probably, if I was not in a different country. And I also do not foresee myself playing it a bunch in the future, but I know I will play it more. This is Ark Nova. Kind of a weird one. Like I said, I've only played it twice, and it's such a big, long game.
Yeah.
that also in the future I foresee myself not playing it too much because I've only played it twice, but it was within a very short span of time, you know. So like I feel like normally that wouldn't qualify because it was only available to me for like maybe a month or so, 2 months, and I played it twice within that span. Um, but because I'm kind of looking into the future, like okay, this is my game now, but I feel like it's not going to get a lot of playtime, even though I really do enjoy it.
Hmm.
So but yeah, Ark Nova, it's basically kind of a polyomino game. You're building a zoo, um, but it's very heavy on the cards in a terraforming Mars style where you have a huge stack of cards. And you're playing cards from your hand, both animals that actually go in your zoo, but then other types of action cards and cards that generate points. Um, and then it has the cool mechanism from Civilization of New Dawn, where you've got these 5 different action cards that cycle based on which card you pick, and the higher up they are, the more powerful that action is. But then it goes back down to the bottom. Uh, just a brilliant mechanism. I absolutely love that. Definitely want to see that. Not only do I want to see that in more games, but I want to see it. I want to see variations on it too. I want to see people take
Mm.
that mechanism and mess with it a little bit more. You know, because Civilization and Ark Nova basically did it in pretty much the exact same way. So I'm looking forward to seeing. Hopefully, Ark Nova popularized that, and I'd like to see it again in another game.
Mm.
Um, but there's just so much going on in Ark Nova. It's kind of a mechanism salad almost. You know, there's so many
It
different
really
things
is.
happening, and I just feel like they blend so well. It's a great experience.
Yeah. We've talked about this on the show. Not quite
Yeah,
my jam, but I respect it for number 3.
cool.
My number 3 is a For the Galaxy game. I'll let you guess which one.
What do you mean, a for the galaxy? What does that mean?
Blank for the Galaxy, but there's a
Ah,
couple options. Ah.
it's got to be race because I know we play roll more, and roll's easier to get to the table and looks
Yeah,
better and
yeah.
is better in every way. So probably race.
Debatable. It
Is
is
it?
Race though. Race for the
Okay.
Galaxy. Yeah, it's debatable, and here's why. I
Okay.
appreciate the simplicity of Race for the Galaxy. Roll is cool because you have different things to represent resources than just reusing the same cards. And probably overall, I do enjoy Roll for the Galaxy more. But it is cool in Race how your cards are also your resources to spend to play other cards. I just like that you have to make some really solid decisions on which cards do I want to play, which cards do I want to keep. But because we have Roll for the Galaxy, we just end up playing that one more. It's been quite a long time since I played Race. I'm not going to sell it,
You know
but it
what?
is a top 5 game I like but rarely play.
I'm going to wager a guess that you will not play Race for the Galaxy ever again.
You know what? Just for that, I'm going to play it this weekend.
So just force your wife to.
Just to
Are you going to
spite
play it
you.
solo? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to force her to play it?
I don't know. The thing is, there's so many symbols. It's going to take me 2 hours just to relearn how to play
You're
it.
never going to play it again, Cody. Mark my words. Just sell it now. Cut your losses.
All right. Looks like I have a couple things to do. I need to go put that review on Akrotiri. I need to play Race for the Galaxy.
Yeah, I would say I respect your decision, but I don't. So
Okay.
I
Well,
respect the fact that you haven't played it very much.
Let's see if I respect your number 2 choice.
I think my number 2 is definitely on your list. This is Stronghold
Okay.
Second Edition. This was
Okay.
the first thing that came to mind when we mentioned this because whenever
Hmm.
we talk about this game, that's what we talk about. That
Basically.
it's so much fun and it's so hard to get to the table because the other person if you want it to be a fun game, the other person needs to know how to play. Like they actually need to know how to play, or you need to be learning at the same time. But
Yeah.
if you're not on equal footing with the other person, I mean, it's not really a fair fight. And it's for such a long game that doesn't end up being a fair fight. That's really disappointing. I mean, we're talking
Oh
like
yeah,
two
for
and a
sure.
half, 3 hours. So, but basically, the whole game is just a siege that takes place over 7 rounds. One person's the invader, one person's a defender, and it's very tactical, very strategic. You're moving troops around on the board. The defenders are moving their troops around on the wall, building lots of different buildings. The invader is constructing lots of war machines and siege towers and all this stuff. And it has a cool mechanism where the invader takes an action that costs a certain amount of time, depending on how strong it is, and then the defender gets that amount of time to spend on something. And you go back and forth like a little ping pong match, and then you resolve any combats at the end of the round. Um, it's just so much fun and so well designed, but just such a bear, you know? It's so hard to play. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on this and say my number 2 is Stronghold Second Edition.
All right. You're just
How
going to
about
say
that?
that, or is it true?
It's true.
All
Yeah,
right. I'll allow it.
same rank. How about that? But yeah, man, what a game. It's weird because in general, I prefer end game conditions over win conditions, and I'm usually not a big fan of like combat or war games. But this game just takes the cake, man. Like I don't care that it's a win condition where either you just survive a certain number of rounds, or as the invader you break the walls and you get a certain strength number inside. But I think it's because it's largely resource driven. You know, it's not just fighting. The invaders, you have a couple different resources you're spending. I guess it's really just wood and then cubes for
Yeah.
people.
And
But
time.
then, according to how much of that you do, you give time to the defender, and then the defender gets to spend time to do a variety of different things. I just love that back and forth. It's such a brilliant concept that I haven't seen in another game.
And there's so much guesswork in this game. There's so much trying to get into your opponent's head because the invader just has to break through one wall to win the game. But there's like, I don't even know, at least 10, maybe 12 different wall
Oh, a
sections
lot of
on the
segments,
whole.
yeah.
Yeah. And so there's so many options for how the invader can move their troops around. And the defender kind of has to equally defend, but you can't equally defend. You got to bolster. And so you have to pull from somewhere to bolster somewhere else, you know? And so it's just
Yeah.
this kind of cat and mouse game of like, where am I going to strike, you know? And are you prepared to defend? So, yeah,
Because there's
great game.
always a response. Like the invader can do something in any place, and the defender, for the most part, can respond to any of those things. But
Yeah.
then the invader can then do something else in any of the places. I just love how complex it is.
Yes. That's our little love letter to Stronghold Second Edition.
What a game. So that leaves you with your number 1 game. What
I,
do you
f-
have?
I feel like my number one could have been on your list, but I
Hmm.
think you definitely play it more than you definitely play it more than I do. I don't think that. You definitely do. Um, you probably still don't play it as much as you wish you would, but you definitely probably played enough that it wouldn't make your list, and that is Brass Birmingham. Um,
Aha.
I've only played this game twice, and it's kind of an Akrotiri thing where somebody mentions it, and I'm like, yeah, good game. I don't feel excited. Like, I don't feel like I really want to play it. But then I play the game, and I'm like, this game is so good, you know? And I end the game, I'm like, that was a great experience. I love this game.
Yeah.
And, but again, you know, when somebody mentions it again, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to play it, you know? And it is kind of a long game and it is pretty heavy and it is easy to screw yourself up and mess up your network and, you know, all your stuff. But essentially the core of the game is you're kind of building this network and you're building a bunch of buildings from your playing board onto the board and using those to generate resources and use those resources to score victory points and the buildings score victory points. And it's just so complicated, though, in how you can build buildings and how your network is connected to other things to allow you to do things. And you can use other people's resources, but only sometimes. And sometimes you can't use their resources. And it also has that, like we mentioned with Akrotiri, also it has that side kind of stock market thing going on. And it's just it's really complex, and if you make a couple missteps, you really regret it in this game. So it's very
Oh
punishing, I
yeah.
would say, too. But it's so much fun.
It's a game that has an incredible learning curve because the first couple of games I played, Kirsten and I did okay, and then we did some research and really learned some good strategies. And it was crazy how much our scores went up after that. Yeah, such a solid game. It's similar, not really similar to Race for the Galaxy, but the component of you have this hand of cards, and then some of them you're going to have to use in specific ways in order to put down a new industry in a specific city. But then your other cards you're just going to burn like a resource. That is similar to Race for the Galaxy, and I love that choice that you have to make.
I find the cards are the weakest part of the game, actually, because it seems so often in that game, I'm like, I don't have the cards to do what I need to do. And there are wild cards you
Hmm.
can get, but it's costly to get them. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. but still
Yeah,
solid.
I think we had that discussion when we actually talked about Brass as our
Yeah,
game of the week
I'm
a
sure
while
we
ago.
did.
But yeah,
I'm guessing it's not your number
controversy.
one.
No, my number one is Terraforming Mars.
Really? The OG?
Yeah, because I've played it a couple of times, but I don't own it. And the thing is, I don't know when I'm going to buy this. I'm sure I will at some point, but since I own Ares Expedition, it's just kind of a deterrent to get TM. I just keep playing Ares Expedition all the time.
I mean, we had this conversation too, but I feel like they're not the same game at all. They have similar themes and some similar mechanisms, but they are definitely different games.
Sure. I do think they are fairly different games. Ares Expedition does have that, well, actually, kind of race for the galaxy feel where you're selecting a given action to take that everyone will take that turn. And Terraforming Mars definitely has the more sprawling game. There's probably more things you can do. Ares Expedition kind of streamlines that whole process and cuts a little bit of it. But yeah, I'll probably get TM at some point. I just don't know how soon, and I don't
Honestly,
I don't remember the last time I played it.
I don't know. I would almost say wait longer and see if a better version comes out, because the production quality of Terraforming Mars is really it's kind of embarrassing how low quality the game is. Like, you either need to buy the base game and then buy a bunch of upgraded stuff for it, or just wait for a more deluxe version to come out that actually has quality components, because it is.
But do you
like,
think it's going to come out?
It's so popular that it has to eventually, but it might not be till like a 10th anniversary situation or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Maybe I can see if something's been announced. Probably not.
Well, there's a big box version, but I don't think it. I didn't look into it much because I already owned the game. But
I'm not against buying upgrades, though. I'm fine with that.
Well, it's just like the player boards. The player boards that are in your version of Ares Expedition are amazing. That's what should have been in Terraforming Mars, but instead it's just really like almost like pieces of paper. It's just barely thicker than pieces of paper.
Sure.
That you use to track all your resources, and you bump that, and it's like, well, now I have to remember where my 6 different incomes were, where they were at.
Yeah.
And the art on the cards is awful and inconsistent. Some of it's cool, most of it's weird. Yeah.
Some of it is just like pictures.
Yeah, it's just straight up pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some of them is cool art. It's so inconsistent. But then the expansions are good, really solid. You can get a new double-sided board, and the Colonies expansion is awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is something it has going for it. There are no expansions that I know of for Ares Expedition, but all sorts of expansions for Terraforming Mars.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that's our list of 5 games that we like but rarely play. I'm sure we have plenty of other answers we could have put here.
Yeah.
And I know I had a few runners-ups that I didn't add.
Do you want to just list them real quick?
I don't remember what they're. I delete them after I make my little list. So
I kept mine. My 3 runners-up. Runners-up.
I think it's runners-up.
Viscounts of the West Kingdom.
Tabletop,
actually. And Bang, the card game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not bad. I could go back and look through my list to figure out something that qualifies, but that would take too long.
Way too long. Because the episode's over, Cody.
Hey! And remember...
Well, that was fun. Oh. Okay. It's actually over, I guess.
No, do your thing.
Well, I was just going to say it was fun to... I feel like we got to mention a lot of games on the podcast now that haven't been mentioned before. Talk about some new games. So that's always fun. That's always nice. And we both kind of have some obligation to get these games back to the table now, too, I feel like.
I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be harder and harder to do, to come up with new lists that have us honestly give games that we haven't talked about before on the podcast.
Well, we'll just have to play more games.
Doing our best. Hey, that is a great answer, man. And remember, Tabletop is an ancient Nordic abstract strategy game with asymmetrical player sides. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been the Tabletop Shop Podcast. You may notice our audio, but especially Nate, being a little quiet lately, and that's because Nate is still in Germany and we have to record at weird hours of the day because we want to keep bringing you this podcast. So you're welcome. Keep an eye out for the next episode, and thanks for stopping by the shop.